All right, you lot, don't forget to give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're at it, give us a 5-star rating. Trust me, it really does help us out. Something I wanted to ask about commentating is that, you know, you turn the telly on and you hear this voice talking over, and it's funny because when you take that voice away, it's the same with football. It doesn't feel, it feels wrong. You need that commentator's voice to really tell the story of what's happening. Now, I know famously with certain, I think it's Clive Tildesley had that huge like A4 sheets of notes handwritten, and it's like crazy detail. Like, how much preparation goes into a race, Brooke? So for example, last weekend, Suzuka, you were presenting on F1 Live. What kind of preparation goes into covering a race?
It is quite a lot, and especially because I'm still, that was my fourth F1 race I've ever done, and they've all come in this year. So I'm still also kind of learning how to prepare, because it's like revising. Like, having a revision technique is so crucial when it actually comes to doing an exam well. You know, you can write thousands and thousands of notes and think you're doing stuff, but actually, has any of it gone in? So I'm still figuring that out. But essentially, I'll always have a track map, which is my like main bit that I clutch dearly to me. I've got notes on all the track. I've got red flag filler information, which for Japan was absolutely necessary.
I was literally going to ask. Tough for us, I'm sure it's tough.
Well, it was just literally random stuff like, you prepare, but 20% of it is all you'll use, and the rest of it is just in case you need it. So thankfully in Japan, I did need that 67% of Japan is covered in forest land. I can chuck that one in there and we can have a bit of a laugh about it, because it's like, it's obviously just a stat to fill the air. But there you go. Did you know that? No. Stuff about, I'd research stuff about Japan, the track, obviously watching a lot of stuff from the years gone by, like key moments, of course, Senna and Prost, but even stuff that happened back in 2014 or later than that as well. Just sort of, so I knew the history of the on-track racing just a bit clearer in my mind. I've got my driver notes and team notes that sort of stay, that I created right at the start of the season, but they're rough bio, but it's all shorthand that I've typed up, just so really only I'll sort of realize that, well, it's fairly simple, but like 33 pp would be 33 pole position.
As long as you know what that means.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I'll update that with every race that I'm doing. And then I will go through the news from the last week. I'll go across all the F1 website and various other outlets and just be trawling through like the headlines and seeing what's good. And then I'll have a Google Doc basically of, I'll start with Red Bull and all the Red Bull news, then all the Verstappen news, all the Perez news, and just go through every single driver. So there's something to say about every single driver. I may not say it, and I'll read the articles and I'll write down a couple of lines that I picked up from it that can give me a prompt just to sort of remind myself. So there's a lot of different kind of elements to it. It's a lot of watching stuff, like I'll watch somebody's analysis of the previous race to see what they're thinking. I'll go through Twitter and see what's going on there. There's a lot of different stuff. Yeah, well, sometimes you've got to be careful with Twitter. But it can also be very useful at the same time. But equally, you've got to be careful, especially if you're on an official F1 broadcast. You can't just say what's being done.
Pick up the latest F1 Twitter conspiracy theory.
Well, yeah,
Here's LHFan44 underscore with some more opinions.
So you've got to be careful, but I look at it and because Twitter's a quick way of seeing information, and teams update it with stuff like that. Or I'll go through all the drivers' Instagram profiles and just see if they've done anything interesting in the last week that it can throw in. It was Kevin Magnussen's birthday before the Japanese Grand Prix. Throw that in, why not? So
there's a bit of a note you can build on, in it, like how well they do.
You can. It's just all these little stuff. Like you can just say, if you're Kevin Magnussen's the first out of the pit lane in practice, happy birthday, happy 30th birthday to Kevin Magnussen, straight out, first car out on track, FP1, green light, let's go. Just little bits that you can just throw in. They give it a little bit more of a rounder edge.
Yeah.
I think I'm not, I wouldn't call myself a know-all on commentary just yet. I'm still very much learning with every commentary I do. But from what I've done, I think, and from what I've seen, having all that information, even if you use it or not, it still informs your discussions or how to talk about a driver, or just knowing stuff about, even the Honda news that came out before Japan, how they're going to increase their branding again back on the AlphaTauri and the Red Bull. just having that in my head, spurred a whole conversation between me, Jolyon Palmer, and Sam Collins about how much Honda has improved from 2015 Suzuka when it was called a GP2 engine to now, and then you have a whole discussion about Honda and Red Bull powertrains, and that leads you on to talking about Porsche and Audi, and then that just leads and builds and builds. So it's conversation starters, really.
What's it like working with Sam and Jolyon? Because obviously Sam's got an incredible insight. His knowledge, his wheel knowledge is second to none for sure. And then obviously Jolyon, ex-F1 driver, has that insight. I think his breakdowns are really good as well. What's it like working with those guys?
Well, so Japan was the first time I'd worked with Sam, and he was brilliant because, especially during red flag stuff, his technical knowledge is just. But
I could listen to him.
It's out of this world, but also he explains it in a way that it's so understandable.
That's it. Yeah, even my simple mind can.
And that's the real skill.
Formula One is so complex, and the cars are so complex.
Exactly, and he can. I can pose a question about tires, and of course we were talking a lot about the intermediates and wets, and suddenly he'll go off and talk about how much water they dispense per mile, and use the equation of it's like a bathtub full of water that they're getting out of the way per second. Just making it easy to follow and understand, which is what Formula One's all about these days.
Mad, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it's exactly that, but it's something along those lines.
Now I've just imagined bathtubs being attached to.
I could just picture myself in the bath, and then 1 second later it's empty.
Exactly.
Just a tire goes through.
I think we had a whole discussion after that. Well, the thing is, we had a whole discussion after that about what kind of bath. It's not a set format for baths. So what type of bath?
Yeah, cool. We're talking jacuzzi.
Intermediate. Yeah, I was about to say intermediate might be a bath, but wet's like a full jacuzzi.
So he was brilliant anyway to have Sam there. And I've worked with Jolyon a couple of times. I think actually it was my second time working with Jolyon. The first time was at Silverstone, and I was so nervous to be alongside Jolyon Palmer, because I was like, God, he's an actual F1 driver, from recent times. He's going to call me out if I say something stupid. And I've definitely said some choice words about you when you were racing before. So, so I was like, oh, but he was so easy to work. He's very sarcastic. He's got a very dry sense of humor. Yeah. But he also, I've said this to so many people, and he knows it as well. He could be a lead commentator.
I say, do you think Jolyon's got because he seems like he's still pretty young. Do you think you could see him being that position in the future?
I think, I don't know if he'd go out looking for it. I mean, get him on, ask him. But if certainly he could, he could do it 100%. If somebody couldn't, if somebody's ill last minute or whatever, and had to do it. Yeah. I reckon he could do it because he's got that perfect way of giving that driver analysis, which is so relevant. He's only one of a handful of drivers that are on air as pundits that have raced fairly recent machinery, him, De Resta, Button, Rosberg, off the top of my head, maybe Webber as well. So, to have somebody like Palmer who's raced alongside drivers that are still on the grid, it is so brilliant to hear his analysis. But then he also, much like Sam, he can equate it and not dumb it down, but just make it more understandable for a viewer who's just chanced on the coverage. And he's great fun to. You can have a joke, you can have a laugh at the same time. I took the piss out of him for his 2 12th place finishes every second I got at Japan. So I was trying to think of different ways to introduce him. I was like, I can't keep calling you. Alongside me, former Renault Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer. Alongside me, former F1 driver Jolyon Palmer. Alongside me, the man who finished 12th here twice, Jolyon Palmer. What's it like around Japan? And he was great with that, so he gets it, which is really nice. And him being really good makes you work harder as well, because you've got a good person next to you and you can have a good rapport. And if you all get on, then the broadcast is even better.
Yeah, exactly. Have you been able to lean on any of obviously the more experienced guys, Crofty, Martin Brundle? Have you been able to lean on them at all and speak to them to get advice onto how? Because also, what do you think it takes to be a great commentator like those guys are?
I think your knowledge has got to be fairly on point, but at the same time, you're not the expert. Actually, you're kind of I see it as you're kind of the facilitator host, because if I've got a Jolyon Palmer or even someone like Mark Priestley or somebody of that ilk, they're the expert. Yeah. They've been in the paddocks, in the pit lanes, working for the teams, actually on the track. So I'm not going to go in and say, well, this obviously means this and this is this. I'm going to pose it as a question and, get them to answer it, really, because they're the ones that are more qualified to do it. So that's what I feel like a good commentator does. They are able to host that conversation, but then they're also able to be an entertainer at the same time. Like in my opinion, I know not a lot of people agree with this, but racing is a sport. It's also entertainment, and you can't flog a dead horse. You can't make a really boring race the best race on the planet, but you can definitely inject a bit of enthusiasm and entertainment where it might not be exactly that way, and just get people a little bit more hyped and into it.